Alright fellas, it is here, the White House card, or UFC Freedom 250, which has just been announced, and the rating of the card from the fans hasn't exactly been positive, and I can understand that. And that's because the main issue is the quality of the card compared to what was promised by Dana White. And also on top of that, the sheer number of fights on the card, it's just not good enough. And I think most of us can assume that the card has been cut down to 6 fights to make it quicker to mitigate any risk of any just shit hitting the fan and to potentially avoid any scheduling issues the White House would probably have. And I do have to say they could have done better overall with the card. And that's exactly what we're here for in this video, to make it better. But realistically, this is a sick card. Like, if this was on any other pay-per-view, we would all be happy, but our expectations were just built up way too high from Dana White saying it's the best card that we will ever see. And, of course, as well, Donald Trump saying there would be like 7 to 8 title fights. That just completely exploded our expectations to an unrealistic level for too long, and now we're all mad about it. But the number of fights is just the thing that I really don't like. I think the caliber of the card for what we have is very good, but the number of fights is the thing that's pissing me off. We could all feel how underwhelming the Sphere card was with just 10 fights. Now almost cut that in half. Look, granted, the pedigree of fighters on this card is way better than the Sphere card, but if the UFC just added more fights to fill out the card, just 5 more very specific fights, then it would be the best card we have ever seen. Dana White is so damn close to actually delivering on what he promised to us. So if that matchmaking team is by some fucking miracle listening, I have the perfect matchups to not only make this card better, but the best card we have ever seen. And it's not just all, you know, fairy tale bullshit matchups like people saying, oh, John Jones versus Tom Aspinall, why isn't that on there? That's just a casual take. And also things like McGregor versus Islam Makhachev, it's just never gonna fucking happen. So these matchups are all completely feasible, and they could all be added to the card right now as of public knowledge. So the criteria for these 5 matchups is that they are able to be made taking into account scheduling of fighters and their injuries. I've gone through everything that is of public knowledge. And then, of course, as well, with the UFC treating this card like a complete crown jewel and pouring a ridiculous amount of money into it, they want absolutely nothing to jeopardize it, which is completely fair. Like, they don't want bad PR, they don't want brawls of any kind, they don't want conflicting political views, especially in that environment. So that clearly means guys like Sean Strickland, Khamzat Chimaev, and of course Arman Tsarukyan are definitely not going to be on this card, and that's obviously just to name a few controversial fighters. They are not risking it. So with that criteria in mind, these are the top 5 fights to make the absolute best White House card, and the best card that we have ever seen, no question. And we are starting from the weakest to the strongest. Now, in at number 5, we have Corey Sandhagen versus Mario Bautista 2. Now, first things first, this matchup was my least confident of the 5 that we have. Definitely the weakest, but still, as the weakest, makes complete sense to put on this card, and also has many, many positives past this card too, in terms of just building the division. Now, you're probably thinking, Callum, if they're putting Corey Sandhagen on the card, why the hell would they have not have made Corey versus Sean O'Malley on this instead of Eamon versus Sean O'Malley? Well, there's multiple reasons for that. Firstly, Sean O'Malley has come out and stated that they never even offered Corey Sandhagen the fight. He was never offered Corey Sandhagen to fight him. He never got a call up about him or anything like that. He only got Eamon Zahabi. And when it comes to that, the UFC know what they're doing. They want Sean O'Malley versus Eamon Zahabi because neither of them are likely to shoot a takedown. Both Sean and Eamon have very high outputs and are both technical strikers, and it will just completely play out on the feet for 3 rounds, if it lasts 3 rounds, because they want an American to really be shining there, and unfortunately I don't think Gaethje's going to be the one to be doing that. So Sean O'Malley's next up, and as the American star, he has a better chance of getting a KO finish over Eamon Zahabi rather than Corey Sandhagen. Corey Sandhagen is very well rounded. He's got the ground game threat that could nullify Sean O'Malley and make for a very boring fight. There's always that possibility. they don't want to take that chance on their feature fight with only 6 damn fights. That's why there's no room for error, and that's why they've made the Amin Zahabi fight. And when it comes to the Mario Bautista fight with Corey Sandhagen, even though everyone wants Sean O'Malley more to fight Corey Sandhagen than Mario Bautista, this still makes sense for multiple reasons. And for one, it gets the division moving way more consistently, especially because there is a hold-up and just a choking point at the top of the division with Jan out with the back surgery. So that leaves Merab there, that leaves Umar there kind of waiting in the wings. And then two, these guys have obviously fought before. It's a rematch, they have a storyline built, and both of them have improved immensely since that time. Mario Bautista especially, he's gone 11-2 since the first fight, which was 7 odd years ago. And Corey Sandhagen has consistently been at the top and he's fought for a title. But 3, Mario wants that fight badly because he went and destroyed Vinicius Oliveira last month and called Corey Sandhagen out. And Corey wants to stay active. And if he doesn't fight in this card, he wouldn't have fought for 7 odd months, and he needs to get a fight booked. And there is nothing better than to book these two on this fight. It gets everything moving a lot more smoothly, and both of these guys bring entertainment factors because both have high outputs at around 5 significant strikes per minute and are both super well rounded and very fast on the feet and very good transitionally as well. So it will be a full MMA display for two Americans in front of a crowd full of Americans. Why would you not want that? And it also makes the next matchups in the division very interesting. No matter what happens, no matter the outcomes, it's going to be positives, because if Mario Bautista wins, he's a fresh matchup for the title. And then if Corey wins, he's got a strong chance of getting a Petr Yan rematch, which the first fight was absolutely fantastic, or he could even get a Sean O'Malley title eliminator if Sean beats Amin. And if not, either of them can just fight Zahabi as the winner. And they are all great fights and perfect matches that perfectly line up with their timelines because they're fighting on the same card. It's just a no-brainer for a high-action, full MMA fight between two Americans that gives the bantamweight division healthy movement, and to see if Mario has improved enough to beat Corey, or to see if Corey is still actually top 5 worthy. Now, in at 4th place, we have Aljamain Sterling versus Gene Silva. And similar to the Corey Sandhagen versus Mario Bautista matchup, this is a great matchup to get the 145-pound division moving for a clear contender. Volkanovski is waiting on Evloev and Lerone Murphy. Whoever the winner is of that will be fighting him. And that fight most likely won't happen until the last half of the year. And both of these guys, respectively, do threaten for the title, because Aljamain, he is a guy that has that severe wrestling threat, and obviously Gene Silva is the dynamic striker. But looking at Aljo, he hasn't fought since August. Like, he beat Ortega decisively, and Gene Silva on the other side is coming off a very good win with absolutely no damage over Arnold Allen in late January. And not only that, when it comes to this matchup, time-wise just being perfect for this card, it would just be a great way to firstly strengthen the fighting nerds, because Gene Silva did have a falling out with Mauricio Hufi, who is also on this card against Michael Chandler. So the fighting nerds could be behind both fighters and give a similar form of excitement for fans like the Chandler and the Hufi fight, because we get a dynamic striker in Gene Silva versus an American MMA veteran in Aljamain Sterling. And I think it's very important to see if Aljo can actually deal with the striking threat, because he hasn't faced it at 145 pounds. And the last time he did, he got KO'd by O'Malley at 135 pounds. And we also need to see on the other side if Gene Silva can deal with the ground game of Aljo, because he struggled pretty badly against Diego Lopez. So the winner of this gets the title fight after Volk faces the winner of UFC London, and whoever wins that will get the winner of this fight. So I think it's a great matchup stylistically. It's a great contrast in styles, an American former champion versus an up-and-coming dynamic striker. And if we have Chandler versus Hufi, why can we not have this on the card? Now, in at third place, and I've seen a lot of people agree with me on this, Colby Covington versus Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. This fight just makes so much sense, and very surprised that it just didn't make the card, to be honest, because both of these guys are some of the most popular American fighters who have ever been in the UFC, and they have been in the UFC for over a decade. We've got Colby, who is obviously the biggest Trump supporter imaginable, probably behind Dana White himself, and then Wonderboy, who is just loved by everyone, who is super entertaining, and would cause absolutely no bloody issues for the UFC on the day, which is something that they would love. And it's honestly a great way for both Colby and Wonderboy to go out. It's a great way for them to retire. Neither of these guys are making it any further up the rankings. Wonderboy is on a 3-fight skid, and Colby got absolutely dominated by Joaquin Buckley and hasn't fought in over a year in classic Colby fashion. And it's the best way possible for Colby, especially, to get out of the UFC for good, because it's a perfect narrative for him to go out on because he can't shut up about Donald Trump. So it makes a lot of sense just in terms of an ultimate career finish for the both of them. But when it comes to the actual fight, good contrast in style, similar to the previous one. It would be very interesting to see how Colby deals with the best striker he has ever faced, and how Wonderboy deals with the absolute onslaught of takedown attempts that would definitely be coming his way. So it makes it a tough one to pick, but just makes a whole lot of sense. And I really don't see Colby misbehaving at the White House at all. So it's not like an Arman Sarukian or anything like that. So I don't see why they can't make this fight. It's a veteran retirement fight that just makes complete sense. Now, in its second place, let me cook, we have Ian Machado Gary versus Kamaru Usman. Now, making this, I think a lot of other people in the MMA space can agree with me here. Just get Kamaru Usman on the card. He's a decorated former American UFC champion. Yes, I know he's Nigerian, but like Aljamain Sterling, 99% of their time has been in America. They are American champions. But aside from that, we all know Kamaru Usman has always been entertaining. He's one of the best champions we've ever had, one of the most active champions. And now, when I do say that we need to get Usman on the card, that's obviously because Ian Gary on the other side is technically interchangeable. Because stylistically, like, we can have him, but I would actually like, personally, stylistically, to have Bilal versus Usman. As ranking-wise, it makes a lot of sense, but stylistically, they will just absolutely scrap, because two wrestlers that'll just end up boxing, and they also hate each other badly, but that matchup won't happen, as America, as a country, are more so pro-Israel through history politically, and the last thing they want is Bilal probably just winning in general, but also going on a Palestine rant with the flag flying up in the air. So as a whole, it does make things pretty difficult, and the welterweight division, in terms of the matchmaking, is completely up in the air for Islam Makhachev at the top. But Ali Abdelaziz is saying that it will not be Ian Gary to face Makhachev, though. I mean, I don't know how much we really believe Ali Abdelaziz, but he has made that pretty confident through his tweets. So I personally think that Michael Morales is next, as he hasn't been ruled out by anyone technically, and of course he's also been brutally finishing everyone and is undefeated, which does put more value on his head. So that does leave Ian Machado Gary, which is still a great matchup. And the point of this matchup is, for one, we have a decorated former champion in Usman with some of the best fight IQ, and who is also very pro-Trump, on the card to fight one of the best fighters in relation to fight IQ in Ian Gary, who has the name value and who's been talking a lot of shit about Usman's title shot validity, and two, to obviously bolster the card's name value overall with the beef between the two of them that we know just won't go out of control, and also creates that old versus new guard matchup. And for three, to get us a clear title contender, as there are just way too many options for Islam right now. And realistically, it is just a very fun matchup that makes so much sense to move the division along and to give the card so much more name value. Everyone's nan's dog would love this fight on this card. Now, in at first place, the best fight to put on the White House card. If Dana White really wants to stand by his word and prove that this is the best card that has ever been made, then you are probably going to want to have the same number of titles on the line as UFC 300. And having Charles Oliveira versus Benoit Saint Denis for the BMF title is the last piece needed to create the best card they've ever had. Now, of course, we could argue Arman Tsarukyan within the rematch with Charles for the BMF belt could arguably better, but as I said, there is absolutely no chance in hell Dana White puts Arman Tsarukyan on a White House card. He's just way too aggressive and he's just a complete liability. Now, Benoit Saint Denis might not have the biggest name value you could possibly have compared to guys like Arman or even Conor McGregor, who I will get into in a second. And of course, Charles isn't in the fans' good books after the 25-minute hugfest at UFC 326. But when we look at Charles and Benoit Saint Denis stylistically matching up against each other, throw all the cons out the fucking window. That BMF belt will get its validity back. Because most importantly, Benoit Saint Denis has a ground game that can compete with Charles's and is more prone on the feet, which is where Charles will then choose to keep it. And tell me the last time Charles Oliveira and Benoit Saint Denis took a backward step in a fight. These guys literally do not know how to move backwards. Like, it's physiologically not possible. These guys are forward pressure machines with super high volume that will much rather decide this on the feet. For Charles, with the BMF belt and what it stands for, Benoit Saint Denis stylistically is the greatest matchup you can give Charles to get the most stand-up action out of him. And this sure as shit is not going 5 full rounds. But who the hell will be complaining about that? Absolutely no one, because these guys will scrap. Charles took no damage against Max Holloway, as we know. And if Charles wins, he's ready for another title shot. And Benoit Saint Denis just cleaned up Hooker in February. So he is completely ready for this card. And he was supposed to be on this card when it came to the talks. And additionally, BSD has the incentive of becoming the BMF. So it's just a no-brainer for both of these guys having the incentive to actually fight on this card. There's just so many positives to having this fight on this card. It brings name value. It brings another title fight. Charles Oliveira will want to get back at the BMF to make sure that he actually puts on an entertaining fight. He'll have a chip on his shoulder. Benoit Saint Denis doesn't take a step backwards. He will slog it out with Charles Oliveira, and he is fresh and ready to go as well. I mean, both of these guys, forward pressure machines, will use stand-up. It will not last long, but that's what everyone wants to see. We want to see a BMF fight where someone gets chinned badly, and this is just a perfect concoction to make that fucking happen. Now, obviously with me playing matchmaker, before I do show you where I would actually place these fights on the card, let's address why the big names in Jon Jones and Conor McGregor aren't on the card so I don't get any pitchforks pointed at my face, which I understand a lot of people are upset about. And firstly, we will start with Jon Jones. Everyone wanted Pereira versus Jones, but this just was not happening, and we've all known that for months now. Firstly, Jones fell out of favor with the UFC after pulling out of the Tom Aspinall negotiations last year, and has also revealed that he needs a full hip replacement due to that severe arthritis that he does have. And Jon Jones also went out and said that he was actively in negotiations with the UFC to fight on the card. And then Dana White completely shut that down and said to his manager there was absolutely no chance that he was fighting on the card, which mainly I assume, because Jon Jones and Dana White are obviously going back and forth very hard right now, and I assume it's just down to trust issues, as he already pulled out of the Aspinall negotiations, and Dana White is obviously wants to make sure that this White House card just goes through clean and smoothly. He can't afford a hiccup, especially with that little amount of fights. And he has basically confirmed that Jon Jones isn't just done with the White House card and getting that opportunity, he's done in the UFC. Now, for Conor McGregor, this one is a bit more tricky. Conor hasn't fought in over 5 years, where he broke his leg against Poirier in 2021, but he's still under contract with the UFC. He's still actively getting tested. But the problem is, you can't really make Conor anything other than a main event. But it takes two to tango. Who the hell do you give him as the main event? Because anyone at lightweight at the moment, aside from Chandler and Dan Hooker, would absolutely fucking destroy Conor. And look, I like Dan Hooker, but who wants him in the main event of the White House? Just absolutely no chance. Makes no sense, even with Conor opposite him. And Michael Chandler's obviously already booked against Hoofy. So the only other semi-reasonable, not really even, so I'm clutching at straws here, was McGregor versus Diaz 3, which would headline the whole thing, but I think it could happen. But firstly, getting that sign would be mission impossible. And the history we have seen for the build-up for their 2 fights, yeah, probably won't be great for the White House security and Dana White's health at all. But I will say, aside from that, Conor did do an interview with Chael Sonnen recently stating that he was always pulled away from landmark events that could, you know, realistically sell themselves without him being on it, like UFC 200, which is a prime example for him. That's where Conor McGregor was placed on standalone cards, like UFC 202 shortly afterwards, and a big one was UFC 257, as it was the first pay-per-view to return from COVID with a limited crowd. Because, like, you look at Conor, he can sell those standalone events himself without anyone else there, even if he has a diabolically shit undercard. I wouldn't be surprised if the UFC are holding on to Conor for something like International Fight Week over a White House card that is already stacked enough and has all the eyes on it regardless. I do think International Fight Week makes a lot of sense because going into that, which is like a month later, a lot of the title fights will have been exhausted up until that point. So Conor McGregor just makes complete sense for that if he even fights again at all. But realistically, for the White House card, which is the main thing, I just don't think there's a suitable opponent for Conor in the event. That's pretty simply what it comes down to for me. Now let's get into how I would make the card. Now starting off, I'm not changing anything up the top. We have Ilia Topuria versus Justin Gaethje in the main event, and Alex Pereira versus Cyril Gane in the co-main event for the interim heavyweight title. Now, O'Malley and Zahabi going to be taking a step down because I have Charles Oliveira and Benoit Saint Denis obviously fighting for the BMF title over 5 rounds as that feature fight as the BMF fight, similar to UFC 300 and the way that that really was laid out. Then after that, we have Sean O'Malley versus Ayman Zahabi straight afterwards. We need that good fight, that second fight coming up into the main card that's going to show a lot of good striking in it. And then Ian Gary versus Kamaru Usman to open up the main card, because now we actually get bloody prelims, which is fantastic. And Ian Gary versus Kamaru Usman, I mean, just a great way to open up that main card. We got a decorated former champion against one of the best up-and-coming prospects. And then we look at the prelims, and as the feature fight on the prelims, we have Maurizio Hufi versus Michael Chandler. I think it makes a lot of sense there. We just have that dynamic striker in Hufi against Michael Chandler that is just going to be so aggressive and get everyone amped up for the main card. And then behind that, we have Colby Covington versus Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. Just that veteran American legacy fight. Both of them have that name value. A good way for both of them to go out before we get into the feature prelim. And then under that, we have Aljamain Sterling versus Gene Silva. Not really too much thought into this placement exactly, aside from Gene Silva being that dynamic striker, going from him to Stephen Wonderboy Thompson as dynamic striker to then Maurizio Hufi as a dynamic striker. So we get 3 wrestler versus dynamic striker matchups all in a row. And then underneath that, we get Corey Sandhagen versus Mario Bautista 2. Again, just a good placement. America versus America. I think it's something that's not the biggest on the card, but I don't think it should be, you know, first on the card. I don't think anyone is really prone to getting, you know, knocked out badly or anything, and you want to see like a good finish at the start of the card. And that is why Bo Nickel versus Carl Dorcas, we're leaving that as a second fight on the card, because it's just one of those ones which is realistically the worst on the card, and it's just going to be in that placement where, you know, it's not too far up the top where people are really worried about, and Bo Nickel's nowhere near the main card, which is the most important thing. And then that leaves the very finish prone fight, which doesn't change from the original card. We get Diego Lopez versus Steve Garcia, where Steve Garcia will either knock out Lopez, or Lopez will probably either submit Steve Garcia to kick off the card. So I feel like this makes a lot of sense. I'd really like to hear what you guys think down below and how you would change it up, what matchups you would have. I'd love to hear your guys' comments on this. I'd love to discuss it with you in that comment section below. But I really hope you enjoyed the video regardless if you agree with it or not. Please like, comment, subscribe. It goes a long way for the channel. And if you haven't already, definitely just check out the video just here on the screen. And I will hope to catch you in the next one.